Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
It is so good to be here together this very steamy evening out here in our courtyard at Temple Shir Tikva with those of you who are here under our canopy and those of you who are at home. We are so glad that all of you are here. I am Rabbi Jordy, and it's such a joy tonight to be leading with Cantor Hollis and Susan on piano, and in a few minutes, Rabbi Danny as well. And tomorrow, I was looking at the calendar and noticing that tomorrow marks the 58th anniversary of Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech, and which is just incredible to think of. And as I was thinking about that speech and all that he dreamed and all that all of us dream, it can feel like such a foreign, far-off horizon to dream for those matters of equality and life as it should be rather than life as it is. And especially at a time like this, especially in a week like this, as we know that there are people suffering and we are caring about people who are in need because of illness, spreading illness, because of the pullout and the bombings in Afghanistan, because of housing insecurity, because of all of the things that we are up against in terms of race and racial inequality right now. It can feel like that those dreams of Martin Luther King's and of all of ours that he was expressing for all of us are so far off. And in some ways they are. And yet, I also want to remind us over the scope of our Shabbat service, and in fact, every service that we have, we come to our concluding prayers, which we'll do, an hour from now. And we sing the prayer Aleinu. And that prayer is looking toward that same horizon, the horizon when all people are one. And it's a reminder as we go through our service, as we light our Shabbat candles in a few minutes, as we welcome the Shabbat angels, as we remind ourselves throughout the service about how we pass things on to our children and how we celebrate freedom and how we honor the blessings that are all of ours. We have also this dream that we know is not silly to hope for, and we have it right there at the end of our service that we're working for every night. So as we join now in Shalom Aleichem, inviting in the angels that we know are with us every Shabbat, we remind ourselves too that these dreams are possible. Page 24.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Yasharei, Malachei Yasharei, Malachei Elyon, Melech, Malachei Amlachim, HaKadosh, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Olechem leShalom.
light our Shabbat candles tonight and mark the separation between the week that has been and Shabbat that is now, I'd like to invite up Diane Tudin and Amy Gilbert. Page 2.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu l'chad likneh shel Shabbat. Shabbat shalom.
We continue with Lachado D, greeting Shabbat as if Shabbat itself were our beloved companion. Pages 20 and 21. We'll be singing verses 1, 2, 5, 8, and 9.
Shabbat
As we reach the last verse, we rise as in whatever ways we are able. We turn and face the doors wherever we are. Outside, it could be in any direction where the Shabbat companion will greet us, and we bow as we greet the Shabbat bride.
Boi v'shalom, ateret mana, gam b'simcha u'tzola, toch emunei ha'segula, boi chala, olech al todi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela, olech al todi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela.
We turn the page, and 11 lines down, we find the words Ma Gadlu Ma'asachaya. How deep are your works, Adonai? We begin with Hallelujah. Having welcomed Shabbat fully into our midst, we also welcome each other. We can wave to each other across our tent, wave to you at home, send a text, give a hug if you're safe with someone, welcome. And we are so glad to all be here together. Shabbat Shalom. And we continue on page 26 with the Chatzi Kaddish. You may all be seated.
V'yitkadal Shemei Rabbah, Be'alma divrach edutei v'yamlich malchutai, v'chayechon v'yomechon, uv'chayedi kol Beit Yisrael, Bagala, uv'izman kariv, v'himeru, Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabbah mevorach, Le'olam olam me'almaiha, Yitbarach, v'yishtabach, v'yitpa'al v'yitramam, v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar, v'yitalei, v'yital, Shemnei Kedusha, Brichu, Leila min kol birchata v'shirata, Tushbechata v'nechemata, Damiran be'ama ve'himeru. Amen.
We rise again as we are able for Baruch Hu on page 28.
Are you listening to my prayer? Can you hear my voice? Can you understand? Am I awake? Am I prepared? Baruch Hu Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed. Le'olam Va'ed. Yadalai, lai, lai, yadalai, lai, lai. Yadalai, lai, lai, yadalai, lai, lai. Yai, lai, 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 lai. Yadalai, lai, lai. Yadalai, lai, lai.
You may be seated. Page 30. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim, b'chochma poteach sha'arim, uvitvuna meshanei itim, umachalif et hazmanim, umesader et hakochavim b'mishmerotehem barakia kirtzono, borei yom v'layla, golel or mipnei choshech, v'choshech mipnei or.
Umavir yom umevilayla, umavdil ben yom uven layla. Adonai tzevahot shemo, el chai v'kayam, tamid imloch aleinu le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai HaMariv Aravim.
We turn the page. Wisdom and wonder, passion and instruction, story and symbol, all these things your Torah gives to us. And the more we devote ourselves to it, the more it grows and gives. What could be a truer token of your abiding love than this holiest of your works, and the living language that gives it form?
Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha bechol levavecha ubechol nafshecha ubechol meodecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom alevavecha beshinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'yishivtecha b'veitecha uv'lechtecha v'aderech uv'shochbecha uv'kumecha וקשרתם להות על ידך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
Page 41. Sing the song of men and women joined in understanding and respect, the song of God's miracles, an earth protected and cherished, a gift for our children and the generations to come, the song of a land once ravished by war, now quiet and content, her soldiers home to leave no more, the song of a world redeemed, the song of peace. We sing our song of freedom and joy, Mi Chamocha.
As we turn to Vashamru on page 44, we're reminded of the fact that when we rest, we're actually imitating God, who created the world in 6 days and rested on the seventh. Vashamru on page 44.
Vashamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, לעשות את ha-Shabbat, לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל, אותי לעולם. ביני
Slightly longer introduction to the Amidah so the cantorers can take a drink and make sure she takes some water in. As we come to the Amidah, which is that central prayer in our liturgy, one of the striking elements of it is that we begin with those words of recognizing God's relationship with all of our ancestors, of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, of Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. We stand here in many ways surrounded by countless generations in our connection to God to give us strength when we pray, but also, hopefully, to remind God that you were good to them, so hopefully you'll be good to us as well, as we offer the prayers of the Amidah, rising in body or in spirit and facing towards the east.
Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor ve'ador, El Elyon, El Chasadim Tovim, Vekonei Hakol, Zocher Chastei Avot v'Imahot, Umevi Gula Livnei v'neihem, למען שמו באהבה, מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי מתים אתה רב להושיע, מוריד אתה, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופך עולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשמי עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומדומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישוע, ונאמן אתה להחיות מתים, ברוך אתה אדוני, חיי המתים. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלע, ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש.
We continue silently with our own private prayers using the words of the page or the words of our hearts through until page 62. Please feel free to be seated at the conclusion of your prayers.
Sure. We continue now with a song for the month of Elul. You can find the words to Psalm 27 on page 358. I will lift up my eyes to the mountains. From where does my help come? My help comes from God, who made heaven and earth.
Yishar Kochachem, Amy and Diane, the beautiful music, and there is so much that we are able to do on Zoom and such like, but the sound of two voices in harmony together is something that we just can't quite recreate on the computer, and to have the two of you singing so beautifully in this month of Elul to elevate our souls in preparation for Rosh Hashanah and the High Holy Days is such a blessing and a gift. Thank you from all of us. So as we turn now to page 253 in our Siddurim, we recognize that while Shabbat is a day of joy and celebration, there are those amongst us who are suffering, those in need of healing of the mind, body, soul, or spirit. And so we think this Shabbat of Robert Friedman, Diane McCaslin, Nechama bat Trainer Razel, Jeremy Pivor, Devorah bat Bunye, Lisa Shapiro, Sarah Fager bat Malka, Ethan Kadish, Mark Lampert, Barbara Ziman, Yaakov ben Sarah Leah, Pazia bat Leah, Eliza Dorfman, Nachum ben Razel, Yizchar David ben Sarah Leah, Wendy Gully, Abba Noach ben Yehudit, Stanley Sakowitz, Sam Goldenberg, Yaakov Yosef ben Avraham, Carol Shackleton, Teddy Molaski, Pinchas Aaron ben Shalom Mordechai Vesara Leah, Avivia Sigalit bat Devorah, Susan Hoyer, Lily Stander, Tyson Patinus, Pam Ross, Ron Abramson, Leah bat Fagela, Susan Scheller, Julian Arce, Natana Eliora, Yitzchaka bat Shoshana Gila, Joyce Pastor, Dee Lurie, Gemma Rose Nicoletti, Motel Lieb, Yoshua Yitzchak Ben Gela Breyer, Dina Lutin, Saul Munvis, Barbara Holtz, Eleanor Lustig, Barbara Lanzett, Nolly Platt, David Feldman, Julie Elizabeth, Peter Gross, Moshe Yoel Ben Esther Avram, Emma Held, Sandy Block, Hadassah Rachel Bat Hannah Leah, Eli Lerner, Dalia Harel, Malia Yusik, Stephen Rose, Ali Brockman, Joan Friedman, Sarat Liat Bat Penina Sarah, Richard Kirstein, Golda Bat Udi, Baruch Ben Genya, Harav Nechama Bat Yaakov Uvernice, Yosef Ben Gittel, Karen Arnold, Mordechai Ben Moshe, Meir Abba Ben Ruven, Georgia Elizabeth Hummel, Barb Scaglione, Barbara Collins, and James Nicoletti. If there are other names you're thinking of, please share them as I look around. For all those we're thinking of, we offer this prayer for healing. It was just over 4 years ago in 2017 that my family and I arrived in Natick and we settled into our home. And I was reflecting on the preceding 2 decades that it took to get there, 1997 to 2017. And I realized that in that time, I spent 2 separate years living in Israel, 3 years living in Cambridge of the English variety, 3 years living in Los Angeles, 4 years living in London, and then another 2 years a bit later on in London, and 6 years in New York. Several different homes, more moves than I care to remember, and an aversion to moving and moving companies so that I hope not to move ever again. I feel in some ways that this is an expression of my heritage. I am a wandering Jew, moving from place to place, country to country, town to town. And I didn't plan it that way. That wasn't ever the intention to keep moving and moving. It's just how it happened by chance and accident. But it helps me to resonate with this week's Torah portion. This week, we're talking about what's going to happen when we enter into the promised land, when we stop all of that moving. And we have the ritual for the first fruits. Those first fruits that the land gives to us, we're told we need to bring them to the priest. And then there's a declaration that we're supposed to make. We stand before the priest with those fruits in our new home, and we say, "My father was a wandering Aramaean. He went down to Egypt with meager numbers and sojourned there, but there he became a great and very populous nation. The Egyptians dealt harshly with us and oppressed us. They imposed heavy labor upon us. We cried to Adonai, the God of our ancestors, and Adonai heard our plea and saw our plight, our misery, and our oppression. Adonai freed us from Egypt by a mighty hand, by an outstretched arm and awesome power, and by signs and portents. And God brought us to this place and gave us this land, a land flowing with milk and honey. Wherefore I now bring the first fruits of the soil, which you, Adonai, have given me." There's a power to this declaration. Now we're settled, we take a moment to think back over our ancestors' story, where we've been, what it took to get there, and all of the struggles along the way. If this declaration sounds familiar, it's because the rabbis felt that it was so important that they added elements of it to the Seder, so that every year on Passover, we remember as well that our ancestor was a wandering Aramaean and went down to Egypt. Now that we're not coming back to the land with first fruits, because that was at the very beginning, on an annual basis, we ensure this memory. And I think there's power in it in relation to telling our ancestors' story collectively at the Seder. But I also wonder about its impact on all of us when we think about our personal and familial narratives. Where were our ancestors from? What was the journey that they embarked upon? Thinking to my own life, I know that both of my grandfathers were born in the countries in which they were raised, one in England and one in Israel. But my grandmothers were those wandering Jews. My Israeli grandmother, my Savta, was 2 years old when her family moved from Romania to settle in Israel, following their Zionist dream to be in Tel Aviv and part of the establishment of the Jewish state. And my British grandmother was really also always my German grandmother, as she moved from Berlin in February 1939, escaping with her mother and stepfather to England just before the beginning of World War II. They were the wandering Aramaeans of the last century, Jews leaving Europe in the face of rising anti-Semitism or in pursuit of the Zionist dream. In that century, there were also countless Jews who left countries in the Middle East for Israel as the situation of Jews there became untenable. We are a people who have always been wandering, always searching for that safe haven, always looking for that place where we can collectively settle. And when we think about this week's biblical passage, there are two ways that I think it relates to us and maybe calls us to action at this time. Internally, it raises the question for all of us of, do we know our family story? How many of us know the story of our grandparents? And how many people know where their great-grandparents were born? Or something of their experiences? Or much further than that? I know that for me personally, I know a little bit about the stories of my great-grandparents, 3 of whom I knew. But so many elements of their stories are lost. And while I can tell you a little bit about my grandparents, I can only call on one of them now to share his story. And so the other stories are also lost. The biblical passage, my ancestors were wandering Aramaeans, reminds us that we need to know our ancestors' story. It tells us, collect and record, gather up the stories of past generations and share them so that maybe at the Seder, it's not just our collective Israelite story we'll share, but our family story and our personal stories. And also, it places a challenge on each of us to write down our story, to record our narratives about our experiences to share with future generations. As someone in that wandering Aramaean category, I want to make sure to recall for my children some of the experiences of moving from a student visa to a green card and to citizenship, and what happened along the way, so that they remember when they take it for granted that they were born here and have all of the rights that go with that. But at the same time, we cannot read the passage this Shabbat without thinking about all of the people in Afghanistan. I know that I spoke about it last week, but some things are important enough that they bear repeating. The first fruits symbolize being settled in the land. You have the comfort and the stability and the security that you can dedicate time to growing fruit, to producing. You can't produce if you're constantly fearing for your life. You can't produce if enemies are at your gates. You can't produce in a situation that so many people find themselves in. But it's in that moment of comfort that we're called upon to remember that we were wanderers, we were oppressed, and we were fugitives. Perhaps it's so that we never get too comfortable in our new situation. But perhaps it's also so that we're thinking about those who are less fortunate than us. Those people who are still wandering, oppressed, and searching for a home. After speaking about this subject last week, we as Temple Shir Tikva have been in touch with the Jewish Family Service of Metro West and the Jewish Community Relations Council and have said, Hineni, that we are here and ready to help with a family from Afghanistan. They will not technically be refugees, but humanitarian parolees which poses some additional challenges that CJP, the Combined Jewish Philanthropies, and the Shapiro Foundation will be helping with. But we, as a synagogue, will be getting involved. And so if you're interested in helping and supporting this family, which hopefully will be happening around mid-September, then please do reach out to one of the clergy. We're assembling a team, and we want to be able to be there to support them in any way that we can. And perhaps, as another element of supporting that family, it won't just be about getting them settled, but maybe it will be about helping them to record and tell their story. Telling their story for their children and for future generations, but also for all of us to learn from their experiences so that when we are comfortable with our first fruits, we're also aware of suffering that's going on elsewhere. This week's Torah portion was so important that we took it and made it a part of our Seder at Passover each and every year, ensuring that it would not be forgotten. The challenge for each one of us this Shabbat, every Shabbat, and every Seder is not just to remember it, but to be inspired by it to act today and every day. Shabbat Shalom. As we return now to our Siddurim, we come to our concluding prayers that begin at the bottom of page 282 as we rise in body or in spirit, facing towards the east, for the words of Aleinu that Rabbi Jordi referenced at the beginning of the service.
Aleinu leshabeach l'Adon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, לתקן עולם במלכות שדי, ונאמר בחיי אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא, ביום ההוא, יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו
Before offering the Mourner's Kaddish on page 294, I wanted to share a reading that was shared last night on the Steady Substack, and I think speaks to how many of us are feeling at this time. Tonight I mourn. I mourn with a deep and heavy heart. I mourn for the Marines sacrificed at a gate in Kabul on a mission to save lives. I mourn for the scores more killed and maimed by this deadly attack. I mourn for those in danger of being left behind. I mourn for the American service members who have already been lost and wounded over 20 years of brutal conflict and the casualties of our allies and civilians. I mourn for our nation so torn by the most unseemly of politics that a terrorist bomb becomes an excuse for point scoring. I mourn for a pandemic of anti-science conspiracy theories that is filling our ICUs beyond capacity and killing by the hundreds of thousands. I mourn for all who have died because of the recklessness of others. I mourn for our planet sick and aching. I mourn for all those suffering tonight who are going to bed homeless, hungry, and frightened. I mourn for a world in mourning. I write this to find some solace in sharing this sadness with others, to find comfort in our common humanity. Loss is part of life. It comes in waves of unequal frequency, on a personal level and a global scale. We can create a space to share our feelings tonight and going forward. And so as we turn now to our Mourner's Kaddish on page 294, this Shabbat we remember the yahrzeits of Stephen Samuel Brown, Irving Brudnick, Dorothy Hazel Chazen, Benjamin Goldenberg, Frank Gordon, Leonard Green, Morris Cavett, Paul Allen Knisnik, Harvey Langweber, Arlene Levitt, Alan Lichtenberg, Rose Liedman, Rose Mintz, Robert Rosenheim, Stephen Anthony Ruskin, Jacob Schwartz, Rosemary Sloan, Albert Spencer, and Zelda White. And during the month of Shloshim, we remember Walter Crone, the uncle of Carrie Shear, Ronald Rosenthal, the husband of Ros Rosenthal, and Lucy Dubé, the wife of Jim Dubé. If there are others that people are remembering, please share their name as I look around the room. For all those we name out loud and for those we name in our hearts, we say together, Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayachonu v'yomechonu v'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, b'galal v'zman kariv v'imru amen, Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach la'lam ulmei almaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ah v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yitada v'yitalei v'yitalal shmei dikudsha brichu, La'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, dam iran ba'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. Zichronam livracha, may their memories always be for a blessing, and let us say amen. As we turn back to the beginning of our Siddurim for the words of Kiddush that you'll find on page 4. Just a couple of announcements before that. Just as a reminder, tomorrow evening is Slichot, and so at 8 o'clock, Jay Gainsborough will be offering a session that's available via Zoom. Details were shared in today's weekly email, and at the end of it, we'll be offering a song, a prayer, and the sound of the shofar, which marks that Rosh Hashanah is really, really, really almost here, which is frightening, but also good to know, because it's coming, which it should be. And alongside that, please do make sure you've registered and signed up for all of the services that you want to attend over the High Holy Days. The details are in the weekly email, and other things are coming up, so do check that for more details. For ELC parents, there's an ELC Pop School party this Sunday, and I can't think of anything else. There's one other. Oh, ACE, yes, this Sunday evening, there is an ACE dinner. Details to have a meal together under the canopy, taking advantage of being able to share together some space outside, so make sure to register for that. And so just a huge thank you to Susan Selms for the music, to Amy and Diane for adding their beautiful voices, to John, who's been making sure that all the sound's been working and functioning for us this evening. It's been a pleasure to lead the service with Rabbi Jordi and Cantolis as we now together offer the words of Kiddush. Again, we hope that you at home are holding your glasses of grape juice and wine up high to share together in this blessing.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kodsho be'ava u'vratzon inchilanu, zikaron le'maaseh v'reishit, Ki hu yom tehila lemikrai kodesh, zecher letziat Mitzrayim. Ki vanu v'chalta, ve'otanu kidashta, im kolamim, ve'shabbat kodshecha, be'ava u'vratzon, hinchaltanu, Baruch atah Adonai, mekadesh ha-Shabbat.
L'chaim.
L'chaim. And our chalot. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen.
B'tei avon, everyone.